December 29th, 2006, London. A clerk in the British Treasury processes a payment that has been made every year for 6 decades. The check is written to the United States Treasury. The amount, $83.25 million. It is the final installment on a debt that began 60 years earlier, in 1946, when Britain borrowed money to prevent its people from starving after winning World War II. The clerk closes the file. The debt is paid. After 60 years of annual payments, Britain has finally finished paying America back for the privilege of having survived the war. But this clerk doesn't know the full story. He doesn't know that the original loan was $3.75 billion, and Britain has just paid $7.5 billion total, double the principal. He doesn't know that before Britain even received that loan, it had already sold $12 billion in overseas investments at fire sale prices to American buyers. He doesn't know that Britain handed over gold worth $4 billion, surrendered strategic naval bases across the Caribbean, and dismantled the trading system that held the British Empire together. He doesn't know that when you add up every asset Britain sold, every base it leased, every advantage it surrendered, and every dollar it repaid, the total wealth transferred from Britain to America between 1940 and 2006 was approximately $450 billion in today's money. For comparison, the Marshall Plan, celebrated as American generosity to rebuild Europe, cost $200 billion in today's money. America extracted more wealth from Britain alone than it gave to all of Europe combined. And Britain was the ally. Britain was on the winning side. This is the story of how the United States didn't defeat the British Empire with armies. It acquired the British Empire through foreclosure. How America turned Britain's victory into Britain's bankruptcy. How the financial terms negotiated between 1940 and 1946 transferred the wealth of the world's largest empire to America, not through conquest, but through contracts signed under duress. And how the mechanism used to strip Britain became the template for the International Monetary Fund, which has used the exact same playbook on over 80 countries in the past 75 years. Because understanding what happened to Britain between 1940 and 2006 isn't just history. It's understanding the debt trap that controls the global economy today. The same forced asset sales, the same wealth extraction, the same American institutions profiting, just different countries being stripped. Let me show you exactly how it worked. And once you see the mechanism, you'll see it operating everywhere. In September 1939, when Germany invaded Poland, Great Britain was the world's dominant financial power. The British Empire covered a quarter of the earth. The City of London was the center of global finance. The pound sterling was the world's reserve currency. Britain's gold reserves, 4 billion Britain's overseas investments, 20 billion railroads in Argentina, copper mines in Chile, industrial holdings in the United States. The British Empire generated $500 million annually just from investment income, but Britain had one fatal vulnerability. Unlike America, Britain imported more than it exported. Britain was an island that had to import 60% of its food and almost all raw materials. Steel, oil, rubber, aluminum, everything had to be imported. Britain's industrial power depended on global trade. When war began, Germany's strategy was economic strangulation. U-boats would sink merchant ships. The Luftwaffe would bomb ports. If Britain couldn't import, Britain would starve. To fight the war, Britain needed massive imports from the only supplier capable of providing them, the United States. Tanks, planes, steel, oil, ammunition, food, everything had to come from America across 3,000 miles of U-boat-infested Atlantic. But America in 1939 was neutral. The American public was isolationist. Congress had passed neutrality acts containing a provision called cash and carry. Britain could buy American supplies, but only if it paid cash immediately and transported goods on its own ships. No credit, no loans. This created Britain's trap. Britain needed billions in supplies. But Britain could only pay in gold, dollars, or by selling assets. And all three were finite. From September 1939 to December 1940, Britain hemorrhaged wealth. The British Purchasing Commission ordered $4.5 billion in goods. To pay, Britain liquidated everything. First went the gold. In Operation Fish, Britain loaded $2 billion in gold bars onto battleships and shipped them to Canada, then to New York to pay American suppliers. It was the largest movement of physical wealth in history. Second went securities. Britain ordered citizens to surrender all American stocks and bonds. The government sold them on the New York Stock Exchange, raising $1 billion. Third went overseas investments. Britain began selling income-generating assets at fire sale prices. But selling these investments was devastating because they generated $500 million annually in income that balanced Britain's trade deficit. By December 1940, Britain faced mathematical bankruptcy. Gold, gone. Securities, sold. Easily liquidated assets, exhausted. Britain still needed $3 billion in supplies already ordered and couldn't pay. This is when Winston Churchill wrote his letter to Franklin Roosevelt. December 8, 1940. Churchill explained the U-boat threat, the desperate